All right, so let's double check that my sessions are still running. We'll list those. All right, great. I have my initial one where I did my JBoss exploit. I have my second Meterpreter session there from when I asked that server to download that payload and execute it. So now, like I said before, I have my foothold in that environment. I am routing my traffic, or I want to be routing my traffic through this box to see what I can see internally. So I did my external recon to find JBoss. Now I'll do some internal recon to see what I can see. We'll interact with session 2, Meterpreter session. And here again, we can run some basic commands, just like we were at the Unix terminal. So I'll run something like a netstat. And again, this is just a command to show the different various network services on this server, communications to and from. So a lot of detail here, but my eye is quickly drawn to this 10.0.1.138 server. So for a couple of reasons. One, because it's on a different subnet. The other reason, and more importantly so, it's using port 22 or SSH. And as I'm sure a lot of you are familiar, SSH is used very commonly for administrative functions. So this is kind of a good breadcrumb to point to that 10.0.1 network range as maybe administrative activity happening there, maybe specifically from this box. So now I have a target. I have someplace internal and a goal to get there. So we'll background the session again. Make sure it's still there. It is. And then I'm going to run a couple of commands, which essentially add some networking to my Meterpreter session. So I'm going to route all the traffic through the 10.0.1 and 10.0.0 subnets through that second Meterpreter session. This is what I was talking about earlier on about how that kind of pseudo shell just wouldn't cut it for me. But this now allows me to route all that traffic destined to those ranges through my foothold in the environment. So now all of my traffic, all my scans, all of my exploitations will look like they're coming from this box, which is great. It makes it hard to find me, which is exactly what I'm looking for. So now that we have that established, I'll move over to, let's see, where's my screen? Here we go. I'll do another Nmap Scan. All right, got it all queued up here, ready to go. So that second line there, sorry about that, but I'm scanning that 10.0.1.138 box, and this time I'm going to check for 4 well-known ports. We're going to do port 21 for FTP, maybe a little telnet on 23, then some web services on 80 and 443. So just kind of some basic things. I already know that 22 is open, SSH, so let's see what else there is. Already got our results back. Pretty quick. Closed FTP, closed telnet, no luck. Open on port 80 though, that's good. Apache again, Red Hat, great. So I already have some really awesome information here. We could go back and try and take a screenshot like we did before, or we could step up our game a little bit and let's run a web scanner. So I'm going to use a web scanner called Nikto. It's been around for a very long time. And again, it's just open source, readily available, easy to download, and a simple command like this targeted against that host, and I'm already getting amazing information. So again, it's kind of jumbled. There's a lot here. I'm going to pick out some parts maybe that talk about how the version of Apache here appears to be outdated. So we got 2.2.3 running. So the scanner's telling us that that might be a good way in. That's good to know. We got some cookie information, and then, oh, hey, look at this. All right, so we found some CGI scripts here, a test.cgi script to be very specific, and test is always great. I love test data. Test servers that people stand up and forget about, they're awesome. This one happens to be vulnerable to ShellShock. Who remembers ShellShock? Yeah, right? Who's scarred by it? So it's been around for a long time. Again, there's a lot of focus put on remediating ShellShock on the external attack surface. And rightly so, a lot of risk is there, a lot more risk is there, but we're still seeing it inside environments. Clients that I was at just weeks ago still had ShellShock running internally. They've forgotten about it, they've moved it way low on the priority list, they're just hasn't gotten remediated yet. But again, it's these simple things that come back to haunt you. So ShellShock is great, and it's great because it's been around for a long time, and it's already scripted out in our tools. So Metasploit has amazing ability to exploit ShellShock. What we're going to use here is just a quick scanner. So this doesn't actually do a whole lot of exploitation, but we're just going to validate that ShellShock is still on that box. show my options. And we'll see that I have my host target or my victim targeted here in the 1.138. We're on that port 80 again. I already typed in the script that I found, that test.cgi. And then what we're going to be doing here is not trying to establish remote connectivity, but we're going to just try and run a simple Unix command, user bin ID. So people who are familiar with Unix know that this is just kind of simple information about the user that the service will be running as. So again, I just get to type this one little word, exploit, and we get our results. So what I care about is that green plus sign right there. That's the output of that ID command. So I now have remote command execution on this box because of ShellShock. Because this hasn't been fixed, I'm able to issue commands to this server as if, again, I was sitting at its terminal. To take this a step farther, I wrote out a quick script that I'll show on the screen here. Called it shocking, because I'm clever. And then there's a couple of lines of code here. I don't want to dive into it too deep, but just kind of at a high level, we're going to be looking to run a wget command to try and remotely grab the etc password, which kind of wraps around, and the etc shadow files that kind of wrap around the screen there. So those are two very important files on a Unix system. They obviously contain password information. We're going to kind of combine those together, clean them up a little bit, get rid of users we don't necessarily care about, and then we're going to execute them against this John tool, John the Ripper. And again, it's been around for a very long time. It's part of Kali Linux. It's a very common tool in the tool belt here. And it's going to use that word list and try and reverse the hashes that we're going to pull from the server. So with luck, we'll run this script. Boom. All right, so a lot of things real fast again. Looks like just kind of scrolling to the top, we were able to do and get that password.txt file. Cool, got the shadow.txt file, that's great. We combine them together and we put them into John the Ripper, which is that tool. Oh, bingo, nice. All right, you can kind of see it down there. We have JDoe as a user, and we're able to reverse his super awesome password of summer 2016. Yeah, that's great. And the funny thing is that, well, yeah, I see a couple of you changing your passwords now. That's probably a good idea. We see this password scheme all the time. The season, the year, maybe throw an exclamation point at the end for good measure, something like that. And then you can change it every quarter. So we use this password scheme against a list of users that we find on LinkedIn, on Facebook, on Twitter. And 9 times out of 10, that work is already done for us. We're just logging in at that point. And that's exactly where I like to be as an attacker, because now I can stop hacking. Now I can stop potentially setting off alarms. Now I can use JDoe's credential and just log into systems. So now you have to find that. Now you have to do an analytics to figure out what JDoe is supposed to have access to versus what they're not. And so this is great. This is awesome for me. I was able to exploit JBoss to get my initial foothold. I was able to take a look around inside, find ShellShock, take advantage of ShellShock to get what I think to be, what I hope to be, an administrative credential there. But we'll have to see. Before I do, though, Neil, what do you got?
I think I can fix this. So just like many of you, I feel like I already fixed this years ago, but as we said, this seems to pop up all the time, and it continues to pop up, especially as I think Victor mentioned, it's kind of the GUI center of your data centers. One of those things that sometimes you forget about. A lot of people just focus on that outer shell. So to do this, we'll go back to that operator dashboard that we looked at before, and we're going to want to do some additional filtering. All right. Okay. All right, back to the dashboard here. I want to clear out my previous filters. And down below, let's do some searching, make sure we do actually have a ShellShock vulnerability that shows up in our dashboard for some remediation. And what do you know? We do have one left. You did find it. All right, well, so this is what we want to remediate then. So before I do that, as I mentioned, what we filter on based up top is actually what is going to show up down below for our remediation. So let's just filter by specific CVE, because it did show up for us down below.
Do you memorize all the CVEs?
For the very important ones, I do. All right, so I have that one vulnerability, and again, we're going to click this remediate button. And we'll just give this another clever name. ShellShock remediation, and the next screen again is going to ask us just to confirm what we want to remediate. Again, I have the different scheduling options, which we can talk a little bit more about. And I'm going to execute this. Now, this one is actually going to be a little bit different than the prior one. And we actually had a question about it a moment ago because this is actually a patch that's going to be applied. But before we apply that patch, we're going to do some analysis. We're going to run what we call a patch analysis against this target to make sure that the patch is actually still relevant and that we're going to apply the right patch for this specific system. So if we don't have the patch in our repository, we will actually reach out to the vendors and download the patch before applying it and make sure that it's the right version. Now, talking about the scheduling options that I mentioned before, so we can schedule these jobs or these remediations to happen sometime in the future, whether it's just some sort of a static schedule, or we can actually integrate with your change management systems and wait for that approval from your change management team, whether it's going through a cab, and then once it's approved, it'll come back into this system and execute that remediation. Now, like I said, this is going to do the analysis first, and then we're going to look at the results and manually do this remediation. But some other options that you do have are auto remediation, meaning that it'll do the analysis as soon as it finds that the patch does need to be applied. It'll schedule that and execute it for you without actually having to come back into the console and verify that. So, Victor, you said that you still see this in your engagements when you're working on client engagements and your penetration testing?
Absolutely, yeah. ShellShock and JBoss. I mean, as fundamental as they are, as old as they are, and how unsexy they are in terms of exploitation, they're still some of the top ways into environments because, again, the focus is on the perimeter, and they leave the GUI center or just forget about boxes that they've just stood up and haven't gotten to the configuration management of yet, or applying their build guides and all that. So it just, yeah, absolutely, we're seeing it still. Yeah, even to this week, I'm writing a report right now for a client that includes both JBoss and ShellShock. It's incredible. And where are the patches pulled from?
So we do pull them down from the vendors, or in the case of Windows, where we use we have a contract with Shavlik to pull all the patches down from them. And Shavlik also provides us with some third-party vendor patches as well, not just operating system. But the good news is we did finish this here, so let's just go and verify or review the results and verify that this server does still need to be patched. And again, this only ran against one target here, and I do see that it does say that it's missing. Over on the right-hand side is the patch that's actually going to be applied. Now, if this was an errata that was tagged with this specific CVE and it had multiple patches, we would see all the patches listed here that would be targeted. And if it was already applied by a superseded patch or some other patch, we would just ignore it, but still patch these other libraries or these other RPMs. So in order to do this, all I have to do is say remediate all patches. Again, this is just another confirmation window where all I have to do is click execute. Now what this is going to do, it's going to verify that I do actually have the patch in my repository. If I don't, I'll download it. Once it's downloaded in the repository, we'll package it up, create the remediation job, and then deploy it out to the system, to the target. And this as well should just take another moment to run.
And one of the most important things that we don't have enough time to really dive too far into, but is unique to this solution that nobody else is doing, is taking that vulnerability scan report, which can look like an XML or a spreadsheet or a combination that some guru security analysts decide was a better format and sent over the wall. So non-standard, right? You see a lot of that. Making sense of that information by allowing Blade Logic to analyze it, to make linkages between here's the vulnerability, but here's the patch to fix it, and it happens to be part of Blade Logic. It ties those together, and it also will tie together the servers, the hosts that are on that report, with hosts that are managed by Blade Logic. So it does two different links that makes it a lot more actionable. If you think about it, if somebody said, patch everything you can right now, this is the tool that we're talking about, because this will tell you exactly what you could patch right now. You have all the tools, you have all the artifacts, you've got all the binaries, you're a button away from patching that right now. Does that make sense? So those are just two very unique things that I wanted to call out about this solution.
Well, in the quick security translation of that, what he said without saying is superseded patches. So BMC will deal with patches that have been superseded by others, so you're not telling someone to patch MS08067, right? It's been superseded 15 times. You actually apply this patch, it fixes all of the old ones. So no matter what intelligence you're feeding into BMC from your VM tool, they're making that translation if it's not already available. That's a really, really important point.
Yeah, one of the things I'll just add to that too, that Seth had touched on was we're targeting very specific vulnerabilities like the JBoss one and the ShellShock one. But on that dashboard, I can select 100 vulnerabilities if I wanted to, or I could select just a couple, and we'll create all the various remediation packages and package them up. And you can schedule them at different times or to run all at the same time. So we can do a lot of the work in a couple steps, but we're really just focusing on a couple vulnerabilities for this demo. So it looks like this patch has been applied, so I will hand this back over to Victor to validate that he can no longer exploit this vulnerability.
All right, great. So we have the exact same module that we had already. Show our options again. We're getting familiar with this now. We're executing the exact same user bin command. We're targeting the exact same server, exact same test script on the same port. Just run exploit. All right, the scan finished, but we didn't get our little green plus sign. We didn't get the output of that ID command. So already it's looking like this is remediated. Let's go back again. And now I'm losing track of where I am. Okay, let's go back again and run that shocking script one more time. All right, so we have some information here, but I don't know if I trust it. It says we couldn't get any password hashes loaded, so I think something failed in my script. Let's just see. Take a look at these files. Oh, man.
That's right. 2 points for good guy.
So not only am I blocked, but you had to throw a little twist in there, huh?
I knew you were coming.
Okay. All right. So again, we remediated JBoss. We remediated ShellShock. That would have stopped me in my tracks. I wouldn't have been able to get the credentials that I now have.